The economic revolution is taking place in our country towards a critical juncture. As we stand here today, right now, new instruments of production are being introduced into the productive process. It never stops, it never ceases. It goes on and on and on. Oftentimes we point our fingers at the manufacturing process as more and more jobs in this sector is eliminated. But jobs are being eliminated in every sector, not just the manufacturing one. In electronics and service industries, no branch is safe. Just for example, we don't talk too much about it, but look at the telecommunications industry. In 1970, 421,000 switchboard operators handled 9.1 billion long-distance calls. Now, 100 billion calls a year require only 78,000 switchboard operators. The decline of work in that industry has been devastating. The beat goes on. Since our last convention, the collapse of Delphi Corporation has provided the leading edge of the tumbling Big Three and other parts suppliers, which is devastating the entire Midwest, in particular Michigan and Ohio. As 100,000 auto workers have taken buyouts in the last year from Delphi, GM, Ford, Chrysler, and even parts suppliers are offering buyouts, as this becomes the new way to shed these corporations of high-paid workers, knowing full well that more workers will take the buyout than they can operate without, so they can hire new workers at a fraction of the wages and not even a specter of benefits. On this front, we have witnessed the decline of dying cities, population declines, populations fleeing devastated areas produced by the economic downturn as we all join the path of the race to the bottom. In the Midwest in particular, we are confronted with, in the state of Michigan, the population is constantly declining. In Detroit, the population is down to about 800,000 from 1.5 million. Detroit competes with Cleveland over and over again about which large city is in the greatest amount of poverty. We're confronted with a serious crisis in front of us that's touching everything. In the little city of Highland Park, Michigan, the home of the assembly line, we have been under the state control for 5 years and stepping. No way to come out of it. We have a long-term debt of $4 million and $2.1 million annual debt, and it continues to grow. There's no way for it to come out of bankruptcy because the state of Michigan now is not solvent. So the beat goes on. As we listen since the last convention, we've noticed, the question of the South that we've always been dear to our hearts. And the big issue that hit the South since our last convention was when Hurricane Katrina blew through the Gulf, and it blew off the coverings, of the poverty under the guise of the New South that existed there for so long, and let that question of poverty stand bare before the viewers of the world. That's right. Even now, today, as attempts are being rebuilt, the Gulf states don't even hit the news until it comes to an anniversary. So we got a new anniversary, so we'll revisit the poverty again. But the poverty goes on, and it continues. On a national level, the polarity between poverty and wealth continues to widen, so much so that the admissions had to be made that we established a whole new level of poverty called a group in severe poverty. That group measures about 16 million people. And in this, it's quite integrated. 10.3 million whites, 4.3 million blacks, and 3.7 million Hispanics, with Washington, D.C. leading the way with a 10.8% of the population in severe poverty. Since our last convention, we've witnessed a huge upsurge in the immigration movement in this country on the heels of outrageous immigration laws in the direction of making criminals out of undocumented workers as well as those who give them aid. This upsurge, which peaked last May Day, we prepare now, in a few days from now, to repeat itself on May 2007 as it approaches. As the corporation sees more and more control of the government, as everything is being privatized and under the heading of contracting out. We have contractors not only build ships and satellites, but they collect income taxes, work up agency budgets. They fly pilotless aircrafts. They take minutes at party meetings. They collect intelligence and even do budget preparation. Corporations are doing all the work, and everything is privatized. But in the process, there's resistance to the social response is developing. And watchdog groups are spotlighting and highlighting these elected officials all over the country. In Detroit, we have Call 'em Out. In Benton Harbor, we have Reverend Pickney. These groupers have developed to run roughshod over these elected officials who's supposed to be on our side. And every time they violate our trust, you know, we go after them. They go after them and they're hounded and they're picketed and they're saluted and they're given Sambo Awards and watermelons at the end of the year about one who kissed the most butt before the year was over. The situation in Benton Harbor is quite instructive because there, Reverend Pickney sits as we stand here today under house arrest, under a tether. Because being convicted of 5 misdemeanor warrants, he's put under a tether in a house arrest. He's not even allowed to stay free on the continuation of the bond until his sentencing date. It's absurd, the level of repression that's developed. In Detroit, we have the leader of the Call It Out movement who is being arrested and charged with aggravated assault for throwing a grape at a school, supposedly at a school board member. At a school board meeting in which the school board came back and announced they're getting ready to close 34 schools. Can you imagine that? I challenge you to tell me wherever in history have you ever heard of 34 schools being closed if it's not a national disaster or a war. And here a school board goes and meet and come back and tell you that 34 schools are going to close. Hell, if they couldn't do no better than that, they shouldn't have came back. Repression spreads. The situation with Blackwater. I mean, I was reading in the paper the other day where they opened up a new training ground in a rural town east of San Diego. Blackwater, that was founded and came out of Michigan, is the leading military contractor in the country. Hundreds of immigrant workers, as we stand here, occupy detention centers all across the landscape. Historic figures are being picked up, and I think the last account I read, the 8 Black Panther members from the 1970s are still under $1 million bond in San Francisco for a crime that supposedly took place back in 1971. These people are between the ages of 60 and 70. They lived their lives for all that time and picked up, so you can run, but you can't hide. These times demand that we step up to the task that we're confronted with this weekend. The social impacts are calling people to fight consciously and politically. The League must take stock of the situation and adjust accordingly to carry out our purpose. These times demand that we step to the plate, and we must plan for growth in every level of our organization. Only if we don't take advantage of the opportunities that we got in front of us will we succumb to the dangers that they also bring side by side. Welcome to the 6th convention of the League. We have a lot of deliberations to go through.